Out there on social media, Facebook and YouTube, you're probably seeing us. We're about to let our local guests into the Zoom room here as well. Welcome everyone on Zoom. How you doing? Good to have you here. I'll spotlight myself. I'll spotlight our guest for the day. If you're here for the first time, this is Piano Tech Radio Hour. Welcome. We do this every Saturday, and you'll get to know what the show is momentarily. Also, if you are interested in being in our Zoom room, so you can be a little bit closer to the action, maybe put a few questions in the chat here. If you're so inclined, banter with me and the guests a little bit. That's all fair game. We'll put a link into the social media chats. You can click on it and then you can join the Zoom. And additionally, you can also put some chat into the social media chats, YouTube, Facebook as well, and we may be able to engage with those if you're out there. But sit tight, and we'll get started here momentarily. We'll introduce the program. We'll introduce our guest for today. Of course, this is Piano Tech Radio Hour, and this is being streamed live right now, 2 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States, and you may be catching us live or seeing the recording. The Piano Tech Radio Hour is what we do every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. This includes manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Radio Hour for just $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. You can join using the link bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. And don't forget, we have an audio-only version of this show. pianotechradio.com is the podcast website. You can go there, you can subscribe, you can check out the episodes weekly. It takes a little bit for us to get them out there from having done them live on the video as audio only, and it is audio only. But yeah, check it out. Driving the car, working out, going for a run, doing dishes, whatever, working in the shop. We also have a blog where we go over some more technical information, type of stuff that you find in our masterclasses member area. A little bit of sneak preview. If you like what you see, you can subscribe to the masterclasses. We're also on all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so forth, LinkedIn. Check us out there. All right, I'm going to intro our guest for the day, and his name is Philipp. I should have worked on the pronunciation. I'm going to try it, and then you could just tell me. I'm going to go ahead and see if I look silly trying first. Scheucher. Is that right? How would you say it?
That's almost quite it. It's Scheucher.
Scheucher. Okay,
yes.
See, no, we're way off.
No, that's totally fine.
Philipp Scheucher. Yeah. Philipp is an internationally acclaimed pianist who has performed in some of the world's most prestigious concert halls alongside renowned orchestras and conductors, a recipient of numerous awards. This includes second prize at the International Beethoven Competition in Vienna. He is celebrated for his blend of tradition and innovation. He's also a passionate educator, teaching at the Johann-Joseph-Fux Conservatory in Graz, and a creative trailblazer collaborating with projects like SYMPHONIACS to fuse classical music with modern genres. His recordings, including QUASI FANTASIA and the Beethoven album by Naxos, showcase his profound artistry and connection to the piano. Philipp, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. And where are you presently in terms of on the globe?
I am currently in Berlin. I actually just moved to Berlin. I'm mostly between those two places, between Berlin and my hometown Graz in Austria, which is sometimes not so easy to, always move around, but basically you get quite used to it. Of course, as a musician, you have to deal with these things.
Yes. Yeah. How much are you traveling around these days?
Every week.
Every week. Wow. Okay.
So I'm, for example, last year it was basically like 200 days of traveling and 150 days of trying to settle, but not quite. Yeah, as it is.
And tell me about the positives of traveling. I know that it's sort of counterintuitive. I know people who travel for work, just regular work. I know people who travel for musical purposes, but a lot of times the story is I landed, I did whatever I needed to do, and then I went someplace else, and maybe I got a chance to have dinner or see a thing, but there wasn't a lot of time for sort of tourism. But some people have different types of schedules. What's it like for you? What are you finding positive about the travels, say?
I think in general, as you find a routine of traveling, you find yourself, like at home quite easily at different places. For example, even an airport can feel like home when you get warm food and just settle down and do your things. Everything, a lot of organizational things can be done remotely anyways these days. So I think you can make yourself feel at home at any kind of place, even in an airplane or on a train or a bus or whatever. So this is actually a good thing what you learn, to be quite flexible on feeling home at different places.
Do you go for like the platinum lounge areas, where you get to
good
like
news is
put your feet up or whatever?
Good news, or maybe not the best news for the environmental part of traveling, but I finally got the a frequent traveler status, and so I have access to the lounges all the time. So that makes it much more comfortable to travel, I have to say.
That's great. All right, sorry, I interrupted. Where were you headed there? So you make your homes in airport lounges and and get a hot meal there. Yeah. What else? Where else were you headed? I cut you off.
What I really appreciate is learning or getting to know a lot of different people, which is a very good thing, that you connect easily with people, and you see like the society still works on this interactive basis. It's not only online and superficial. You really can connect on a deeper level, I think, especially through music, especially through the profession. Everything combined and connected to music, I think, helps a lot to not follow this structure of this very quick life what we have these days.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. You know what I'm thinking? Maybe we'll go just straight to like a recording of your work, so we can kind of get our bearings there, and then we'll come back and have a little bit more conversation. We have this Beethoven. No, sorry. Yes, yeah, Beethoven was the first thing we were going to do. Can you give us a little bit of a background on this before we dive in?
I did quite a lot of competitions throughout my career as a pianist, and I did many. And I was also quite fortunate to win a good amount of prizes. And this was, I would say, one of my most heartful moments during a competition, because it was in Austria, in my home country, in Vienna, in the Musikverein, in the Golden Hall, where every year the New Year's concert is held. And this was a very special moment for me. And I was awarded the second prize there, and played the fourth concerto of Ludwig van Beethoven in that competition in the finals. And this is a memory which stays for me for my whole life.
Yeah, that's great to have it on recording. All right, here we go. Let's take a listen and a look. That's really cool. That's a great recording.
Thank you.
Wow, what a beautiful venue as well. Oh my gosh. And the whole,
Yeah,
it's just so well presented. The orchestra, they're all so neatly placed, and everything really came together for that, for sure.
yeah. I think the hall in itself. I don't know if you have ever been to
I've
Vienna,
never been there. No, yeah. I've been
and
to Vienna, but I have not been in that
yeah,
location.
and what a quite funny coincidence is. I will play the next time on 1st of February there, the Beethoven Triple Concerto, with two of my friends, a violinist from Vienna and a cellist from Berlin. And we're three soloists together with an orchestra. And so this will be actually the next time in this hall after this competition. So
Cool.
nice comeback.
Yeah, amazing. So, some people will just be listening to the recording of this. So, I guess I'll explain some things. So, the room again, very what would you? I'm trying to think of the best word for it. Ornate maybe is a great word for the location. There's sort of like gilded walls, and like it looks like maybe some Greek referencing in the sort of paintings on the walls and things like this. And specifically, I wanted to, well, I noticed the sort of level of intensity in your uh, personal expression. That luckily with this recording, sometimes you don't really get this advantage. They have multiple camera angles. You get to see your face, and really kind of see just the shifts of emotion or kind of approach going on. And so that begged the question for me, and of course, this is probably a common question and probably one that's not really that answerable. What's going on in your head? Maybe when you're playing, or maybe from a musician's perspective, because I've played as well. Sometimes you're just in the moment you're doing it, but maybe when you're practicing, maybe there's these moments like you were playing the trill, and it was almost like you were moving through, various emotional moments or thoughts, as it happens. But yeah, do you have like a story that's projecting you through the piece? What's your approach there?
It's really a hard question to answer, honestly.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things going through my head when I'm playing. Most of the time, it is to have a certain backstory behind it, to have like
It
the
is.
red thread through
Yeah.
a piece or whatever, a bigger work or a smaller work, it depends. And on the other hand, trying for, especially with classical music, you need to train, you need to practice a lot. You spend hours and hours on a piece to master it for a performance, especially in such an important performance as a competition. And then still what you need, or at least what I try to do, is to be in that moment and to make it an interpretation of that moment, not like preparing something so well that it will be the same over and over again. So basically seeing it as an improvisation in that moment on stage. I try always to be with a fresh mind and also reflecting the day, what happened. I remember very well this morning when I woke up before playing in the evening's concert. I remember it was a beautiful autumn day. Sun was shining, leaves brown falling down of the trees. And I opened the window in Vienna, and it was such a beautiful morning, like, as it was a heavenly blessed day. And I opened the window, caught a wonderful breath of fresh air. And with that in my head, I approached this whole performance as it was a living process.
I like that. That's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. I mean, a lot of my musical background is in jazz, so I definitely identify with this improvisational approach to music in general. Sorry, I got to let some folks in here who are waiting. Okay. make our admin co-host so she can also let people in. So I have personally also, with some lessons with classical music, been given this concept of maybe having a story, running through a piece. So it was interesting to hear. I don't know if you're talking about an actual story, like a sequence of events with like a storyline or an arc, or if it's more just how the different sections, connect is really what are you referring to something that's more narrative, or is it more just kind of like the structure of the piece when you say the storyline?
That depends really on the piece, I would say in particular. For example, with this concerto in particular, I don't have this red thread story where I say, okay, I'm going on a journey through these and those kind of lines. But for example, with other pieces, I really have this clear image what happens, like a horror movie scene or don't know, love story theme or whatever. That happens as well. But especially in this particular piece, I have to admit, I remember very well, this was more like certain different parts patching together.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I also, so this is the foundation of this show is from the piano technician's perspective, the folks who take care of that piano. The piano is in great shape as well. We often talk about or reference the concept that a performance of a pianist on a stage like this is a collaboration, between the pianist and the piano technician and even the manufacturer of the instrument, and of course there's all the orchestras there and the conductor, and that's obvious. And I don't know how much this is present for you in this particular situation, but can you talk about how you approach interfacing with piano technicians as you go into these different locations? Are you very particular? Are you pretty, accommodating because there's going to be a lot of variability? How do you approach that?
I totally see. Also, I totally agree with you on that it is a collaboration with the piano technician. I actually also appreciate it when I can work with people I trust, I know already. Of course, as the profession as a pianist brings mostly that you play on different instruments all the time, that you have always different piano technicians. It's also something which is very common. But on the other hand, to have this example of the Beethoven competition, for example, there was a Bösendorfer grand piano, and I have to say I work with all different kinds of brands, but I also intensely work with Bösendorfer recently because I appreciate their instrument and I know the people. I know I can trust them. I know that they provide good piano technicians when we're collaborating. So in this particular case, I would say I had maybe also an advantage to play on the Bösendorfer because I was used to it. I also, my grandparents owned the grand piano by Bösendorfer, so that was kind of you feel like home. Every piano feels different. And so also a piano technician brings out the best, hopefully, in most cases, out of the piano. And for example, with Bösendorfer, I know they have people who I trust, and when they work with the instruments, I know it works very well. Also in Germany, near Berlin, I have a very, very good piano technician who works for all different brands. And I know that when he goes to the piano and I tell him things, for example, oh, in that particular case, maybe the repetitions need to be a bit more precise, for example, for a Ravel piece, which needs to be very, very fluent and fast in the repetitions. He knows exactly where to, fine tune things. And this is something very, very important for all musicians, and also to learn. And probably this is a lifelong process for a musician who is not a piano technician, how to like say and help. What can a piano technician do to improve the piano for your own playing?
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. Um, are you are you familiar at all with Steingraber and Sohn brand piano?
I am actually. They are based in Bayreuth, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yep.
because I played directly in the factory.
Mm.
They have a room there, like a little concert hall where they do concerts. Have you been there?
No, we've had a couple representatives on the show a few times. So it's interesting, and I know they're based in Germany, so I was curious about that as well. Yeah.
I remember quite well because I played the Liszt Sonata in B minor there, and the piano had this soul to bring out the lyricism of the piece very well. I remember that very well. On the other hand, what I think is that the brand itself is a little bit underrepresentative in most concert halls because it's not a major monopoly
Right.
concert hall grand piano.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. It's been interesting to get to know them. Part of having this program has been an opportunity to get to know things like, Steingraber. You don't hear much about it in the States per se. We don't have a lot of them at all anyways. And yeah, it's particularly what's fascinating about the brand is their both connection to the sort of history of the instrument and sort of bring that out in the manufacturing that they do, but then also, doing some kind of innovative things that other brands won't try, because it's just a little bit too cutting the edge, So I definitely appreciate that about them. I told you this before we started, and we usually do this earlier, but we usually talk about someone's history with music, So I'd love to go there, and then maybe we'll see another recording. How did this all get started for you? Were you kind of like a young kid who, got started early or did this evolve kind of slowly but surely? How did it evolve that you actually had become a professional musician? And then also remind me, hopefully we'll get there. I want to talk to you about competition and sort of winning competitions. I had some questions about that. But first, yes, what's your history?
My history is actually quite basic one. I had an advantage in that regard that my parents were not musicians, and so I had a quite natural start with music. Actually, my father got this little keyboard, not even 2 octaves in range, and I was 4.5 at the time, and I saw my father trying things out on that keyboard and electric keyboard, and so I played along a little bit. And so this was also quite a great time, spending time with my father. It was like father and son time, playing around, making a little bit of music, not very serious, whatever. And then my father soon noticed that this small, tiny keyboard has its limits, of course. And so he bought a bigger keyboard. A Yamaha, whatever those basic keyboards of the 90s were. And from there on, actually, everything started to grow and more. So I grew together with the piano at some point. So I started in a local music school with basic, normal piano lessons. And from the Yamaha keyboard, it went to an upright piano and then to Bösendorfer grand piano, and so on and so on.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a very organic thing. It's not like your parents had a plan for you or, were they particularly I'm always curious about this too, because I feel like I've become relatively accomplished at some things, and my parents did not push me at all at anything really. I mean, maybe they were just kind of, there were some demands that I had to fulfill, but it wasn't like you have to practice or have to be a good student or anything. How did your parents approach it? Were they relatively soft or did they get disciplinary about it?
Very, very soft as well. I was very lucky because I've never had a nobody never forced me
Yeah,
to practice
wonderful.
or to play. So it was a completely natural approach to making music. They supported me at all times, but they never knew it would go that far, that I would become a serious professional musician. And at some point headed in that direction when I started studying as a pre-student at the university in Graz. That was kind of a different program. It is now a little bit different as it was back then when I started it, because I officially was a student with 10 years of age. And then with 16, I already was with my piano professor, who I studied with almost like 10 years. He was my mentor, and basically brought me into this professional world in the end.
Great. Let's check out another recording. Let me get over here into this other screen, and I think this next one is going to be from your album. So this is new. Do you want to give a little bit of a preface to us listening to the album?
Maybe if I may have a suggestion, if we are gonna talk about competitions, maybe after, maybe we can save the album announcement for later, because this can be especially maybe as a little teaser for the end. But
so you want to do the Clyburn?
Let's see. Let's look into the Clyburn. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. That's appropriate. Yeah, I agree. All right, so there, share that. There we go. Yeah. Let's exit out of there. Great, great. I love the intensity of that one, and also the grandiosity at moments, like the dun, dun, it's very orchestral, and yeah, and almost like a regal at times. Um, is
It
there
is
any
a
comments?
masterpiece by Franz Liszt. I have to say, I
Yeah.
need to advertise this piece because it is like next to the second Hungarian Rhapsody, which is honestly technically a little bit easier, but has also the same effect. But this Spanish Rhapsody is a masterpiece itself. It has this grand, grand, grandness.
Yes. Okay, so here's what I wanted to ask you about competition. Are you familiar? So there's a guy that's relatively famous in the United States, but I don't know if you would have heard of him, named Vince Lombardi. It's like a famous football coach. Um, yes? You
Sounds
heard of him?
familiar. I
Okay.
think I have read something, but
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just mentioning his name. So he has this quote, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. And maybe you've heard the quote. But I forget where I was reading. I was reading recently that he actually regretted that became that's probably the most famous quote that's associated with this man, which makes it sound like, when he's preparing for competition with his team, and he's advising the players that you have to win at all costs, and you must be thinking about winning it all the time. But at the same time, even he would kind of concede that a lot of what else he's talking about is you can't really be so focused on winning if you want to win. You have to be focused on something else. Otherwise, you'll psych yourself out, become distracted. So I'm curious, having won competitions, and how do you approach this? Something's on the line. Is usually maybe some sort of financial prize, or some sort of thing like that, or just the sort of bragging rights or reputation. Um, how do you approach winning? The concept.
I think the approach of winning or how to achieve winning is it's like in love. When you love a person and you try everything to be loved back, that will not work. That will not work out. It's like if you hold something too tight, it will die. But also too loose, and it will fly away if it's a bird, for example. So most of the time, it's you need to have it somewhere in the back of your head. You need, especially now talking in the musical terms, you practice and you prepare for winning, basically. But when you're in that moment, then you need to forget everything and then just do what you do, because otherwise you lose track. And that is exactly this you hold it too tight moment. When you kill a performance because on focusing, okay, I need to play all the notes correctly, I need to hear this and do that, then no magic can happen. I once had this moment, funny enough, also during a piano competition. I met this cook, Michelin star cook, very high class cook from Spain. And before going on stage, I was having a short conversation, and he asked me basically the same thing. How do you approach now going to the final round of this competition? And I said, I will give 120%. I will give more than I have. And then he gave me the advice, maybe reconsider this, give 80%, and the 20% of the rest, let the magic happen. And I think this is an advice what I would give to everybody out there who is thinking and trying in competitions, because very, very basic in basic words, nobody wants tryhards. So just do whatever you like, do it with love and with passion, and the rest will come automatically.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So yeah, that comports with what a lot of folks say, you know, about the process. You have to kind of let go in order for anything to really manifest. But you did say you said something like, I practice for winning or something, right? Or so that kind of, I had a vision of that, and maybe you can clarify if there's anything to clarify. It's almost like as you rehearse, you can't rehearse with the mindset of this is a third place piece, or this is, you know, this is a losing piece. You have to rehearse with the mindset of I'm rehearsing the perfect, you know, or the magical performance, or for the number one thing. Is that kind of how you see it? You know, when you're practicing, there's a concept of this is being practiced as though it is the master version. Am I getting that right, or do you have a different concept?
That's kind of it. Maybe I'm also trying to reconsider and reflect what I did, and mostly you see those things which you did wrong in the past. Because, for example, also like programming for a piano competition is always also kind of a tactic itself. How do you place pieces? Do you do pieces like the killer pieces in the first round already that you get through, or do you like try to, you know, get through with the normal stuff, the basic things, and at the end you put out the burner, and then everybody is like so super flashed and okay, this must be number one. So these are also things you need to consider, but of course the most important thing is always to think, how can I make a piece my own? And not in particular seeing as, okay, I need to practice and rehearse it as a winner piece or whatever.
Okay.
I don't think this is 100% the process. Maybe in a final concerto it can be, yes. But also this is dependent on circumstances. If, for example, if you need to prepare 2 concerti, then maybe only so one is chosen, and you don't know which one is it, the better one or the worse one. So you cannot really prepare for that moment then.
Yes. Yeah. So it sounds to me like what you're doing though is trying to create the best version that you can create. You know, not the best version that you're uniquely capable of producing.
Exactly.
Right?
I think that sums it up pretty well. I think that sums it up pretty well. And I can say now, after so I decided not doing competitions anymore for some years already, and now I can see everything a little bit in perspective, and I can say it is a lot easier doing this in a normal concert, besides so far away from any competitive surrounding.
Yes, if you like it better.
Of course.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's fun. It's funny that we make competitions out of things. You know, I remember when I was in high school, I was in a band. You know, just like a band. We played jazz and rock and roll, and we were kids and stuff. But the guitar player in the band had been previously was a basketball player, and was, you know, like, it's high school. It's like, who really cares in the end? But, you know, was like one of the star basketball players. And I always got this feeling he's like the band, like the whole thing was like there was a competitive thing, you know, like playing the guitar. And, you know, it's like, you know, yes, there's something that helps you be driven about being competitive. And there's that special part of it. But in the end, of course, music is about finding your unique voice, and you cannot really compete with anyone else but yourself to do that. Shall we listen to the album piece?
With great pleasure.
Okay, awesome. Let me get that loaded up here. And will this one have a violin on it, or
yes,
set us up for this? Yeah.
A duo violin piano.
Okay. Another great piece. One of those double stops, that's what you call it, right? When they're like playing a chord on the violin. Really choice notes there and chords, especially for a combination with the piano. Can you talk about the piece and why you chose it? And it's a really magical piece.
It is a magical, but also intense and very intellectual piece, I would say. It is the first piece of 3 mythical episodes by the Polish composer Karol Szymanowski. It is a very interesting piece itself because it starts kind of a change in the musical language. It is kind of impressionistic, but also in the own language of the perspective of the Polish composer. But what is really interesting in this set of pieces, it's called Myths, Opus 30. And what is interesting that Szymanowski tries to change a little bit the technique of the violin, especially the violin. But on the other hand, also those two layers of piano and violin, how they fit together. For example, in this first piece, where the piano has this kind of floating background sound, which is actually very, very difficult to handle, because you have so many notes, such an amount of notes to play, while the violin has this solemn, subtle one note line in the top, which makes it so difficult to, how can you form a whole piece together. But also this story, what is behind it, helps understand what and why everything is as he writes it. So just shortly for this piece, it is about the fountain of Arethusa, a mythological figure, a woman who is chased by a river god, and this river god cannot catch her because Arethusa gets help by Artemis, by the god, by the goddess, and then she helps her transform into a fountain, into a spring. And that's what is all about, this watery, flowy thing, and the intensity when the river god tries to catch her. And so in this case in particular, as we spoke at the beginning of our interview about stories, in this particular case, we really have a story, very imaginative. It's like film music in a way.
Yes. Wonderful. Did you imagine that the piano is the river god doing the chasing, and the violin is the one that's fleeing, or not? That's kind of what I'm doing from memory, but I don't know if that even
honestly
applies.
that's quite interesting, how to say. Honestly, I had this vision myself, but my wonderful friend Cosima Soles Lariguer, the violinist, in this recording, we never talked about this for some reason. So I think this is a good stuff to discuss, which I'm very curious what she thinks about. But obviously, like the piano has all the waves and like all water related things. So this is, I think, very, very clear to hear. You also asked why we chose this piece. So we had the idea of recording this album after our final performance in Hanover at the university, where we both studied. And we finally made it happen that this album comes out, and it was an odyssey. That's why we called the album Odyssey. And it comes along with two other major works. It is the Hindemith Sonata, Opus 11, number 1, and a very, very great piece by John Corigliano, the Sonata for Violin and Piano, American composer. And at the end, we have a kind of encore, the Kevin Putz aria.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I want to talk about, because we talked about playing piano for concerts and working with technicians and things like this. I do want to talk about the recording, like a little bit of the behind the scenes. It sounded like there was a natural room sound in that particular recording. So it sounds like maybe you did record it in a concert hall, but I don't know, maybe you did it in a studio, and then in those cases, I'm just curious of the process. You do different pieces on different days. Do you kind of just record it all in one day? Do you have a technician on hand that's kind of stepping in, between whenever they're needed? Or how do you approach the actual recording, putting it together, location, and also, the piano technician's part? And was that a Bosendorfer as well, that last one?
last question first. Yes, it was a Bösendorfer as
It
well.
was okay. Yeah. I
Yes.
feel like I really interestingly, I do feel like I hear that you play differently on a Bosendorfer than a Steinway. Like I
Really?
could almost, I mean, the Steinway performance is wonderful, which was the middle one for those that can't see the video. But yeah, I feel like you do, it does seem like you're more at home somehow with the Bosendorfer.
That's very interesting. I for some reason, maybe it is exactly what I said to you earlier, that when you have played a lot of Bösendorfer, then you kind of feel home on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, about the recording process, this was a very, very demanding recording, to be honest, because the program is very intense. It is very difficult to play, um, and you're not alone. So um, the albums I did before were, like, for example, the Naxos album was a live recording, so
Mm-hmm.
cannot really do much in those kind of recordings. But the other albums I did were solo albums, and you're only dependent on yourself, and you can do things again, and you only have your own playing. But in this particular case, you need to combine two musicians, and both need to get the best version, or
Mm-hmm.
what we think is the best version, like technically, musically, also philosophical, whatever. And so this was a very demanding process, and we were quite in a tight schedule. So we basically had 3 days with setting up the hall. So we had the Bösendorfer showroom in near Vienna, which is kind of like a concert hall, as you noticed correctly, and everything is natural reverb. So our sound engineer recorded big room, closer room, and combined this kind of naturally. And I've worked with him before on my other recordings, and I know he's very quick. He reacts quickly, and we get quite quickly to a setup where you find ourselves comfortable with. It was way different, of course, with duo, violin, and piano. It's a very, very hard setup, I would say. Piano, violin duo is always very difficult for every sound engineer. But I think we got a great result, and we ended up working basically all day and all night long. So it was long nights, and I'm thankful for all the work we put in there for this great result.
Now, given that it was at the Bosendorfer showroom, were there like people at Bosendorfer hanging out? Oh, they're doing the recording, or no, they just kind of give you your space and you're doing your thing.
No, basically, on the weekends there's nobody there, so
Yeah,
basically you're
just give
all
you your
alone.
space.
It's like a great studio where there are like 20 grand pianos in that room, and 3 grand pianos I could choose from, and I chose the one I thought it's the most appropriate one for the recording. And this was a great moment with the sound engineer, and we are very happy that the album is going to be released on the 28th of February.
Awesome. Um, just one other thing, which is I've just realized, which is kind of clever. I don't know if this is intentional, but there's a book by a fellow named Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He's kind of like a, have you heard of him? He's an economist type of guy. He wrote a book called Anti-Fragile as well. He has a book called Skin in the Game. And, the hypothesis or the thesis of the book is, you get you get better results out of people when they have skin in the game, meaning, which means I don't know if you know that phrase, but it means like you have something at stake, right? So like, for example, if I work for a company and I own stock in that company, I might perform a little better because, I could benefit financially. So I'm noticing here, you're at the Bosendorf showroom. They have the Bosendorfer pianos. It's like, if you're going to get a good sound out of a piano, I think they've got some skin in the game. So that's, I don't know how intentional that was, but there's certainly, it's a smart and clever way to produce a recording to make sure that the piano manufacturer has some skin in the game, and clearly they did, right? You're right there in their showroom. So incentivized to make a great instrument for you. Nice work. All right, cool. Well, it's been a wonderful hour spending with you. Glad to get to know you. And by the way, we'll shut down the Zoom call here in a moment. If you want to jump back on, you and me will do a little post wrap up. But anything you want to share with the audience before we outro, where people could go? I know you mentioned the album. I'm guessing they could listen on Spotify or order it, or what would you like to share with people?
I need to share a lot of things, but I'm trying to make it as short as possible. I would like, first of all, to thank you for having me on the show. It's been way too quick, honestly, and always too short, of course. I advise everybody to enjoy the music as it is, and maybe you also check out my work, what I'm doing. For example, the next thing is the album release of the piano duo with me and Cosima on the 28th of February. And I'm also having a great, wonderful concert series now here in Berlin, a chamber music series. So any of you is invited to join. You can find it on my website. It's philippscheucher.com, so quite easy. And then also I'm going on tour with the electronic classical project I'm doing. It's called SYMPHONIACS. You can check that out. It's way different from what we have heard today in the show. It's an electronical classical project with a DJ from Berlin. It's a lot of fun. I think we need to talk about this in another time, hopefully.
Yeah, actually, if you're welcome to, if that's a group and you want to notify other people, we could talk about that specific project. I'm happy to put another show together. That'd be great. Anyways, continue.
And yeah, I think that's the most important thing. So thank you for having me.
Yes, wonderful. John Ross from the Peanut Gallery here. John, good to see you yet again. Thank you for always joining us. He says, thanks for sharing your perspectives. All right, I will sign us off here of the show. This has been another musical journey. The end, unfortunately, of it here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks again to Philipp for joining us today. As always, we are brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you just joined us today by signing up for the session individually, hey, you can make your life more convenient. You could subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour at just $16 a month. Get the recording of today's session in a member area, automatic registration for each week's new session. Sign up at bit.ly/joinptrh. That's bit.ly/joinptrh. Make sure to check out the podcast, pianotechradio.com, the blog at Substack, Piano Technicians Masterclasses at Substack, as well as our socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You'll find us on YouTube as well. Thank you very much for sharing this time with us today.